Perfection is a myth. Perfection is the ideal, and ideals are merely dreams painted into the future, figments of our imagination that provide us outlines for our goals. In the end, perfection is a mirage. Neither we nor our world were designed to be perfect, yet we must strive towards perfection. The mystics of Judaism, the Kabbalists, saw within our creation story another story, one with imperfection at its core. God's creation of the universe was done in such a way that we, finite beings, would experience the imperfection of finitude in spite of God's infinity. First was Tzimtzum. In a paradoxical act, God contracted to create a space of not God, in which finitude, that is, our world, could appear to exist. Second was Shavira. Within that space, God created a series of vessels for God's light, but these finite vessels could not contain the infinitude of that light, and they shattered. We exist amongst these shattered pieces of the original orderly creation. We live out our lives in a world that gazes towards perfection, seeking to fit the shattered pieces back together while surrounded by the reality of imperfection. The Kabbalists tell us that in truth, all is capital N nothing. God's ultimate reality is Ein Sof, endless nothing, of which we are all a part. Our experience is one manufactured within this endless nothing by the endless nothing. Today is Shabbat Zachor, the Shabbat of remembrance leading up to Purim, during which we read the commandment that we must never forget to blot out the memory of Amalek. The people of Amalek attacked the Israelites at the outset of their exodus from Egypt and preyed upon the weakest among them. The connection at this time of year is to Haman of the Purim story, who is said to be a descendant of Amalek. The shattered pieces of creation are often referred to as klipot, husks, the outer membrane of those imperfect vessels that were made to contain the light of God. One of the manifestations of these husks, according to tradition, is Amalek. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, a Hasidic master, described the husk of Haman or Amalek as that of greed to the utmost degree. The impulse to hoard resources rather than to think of our place in the bigger picture. The impulse to get as much as we can individually, no matter the impact on the collective. This impulse is baked into our reality. The shattering of the vessels of creation led the generation of the husk of Amalek. The husk of Amalek leads to forgetting the bigger picture within which the shattering of the vessels took place. It turns our material, mundane reality into the only ground for action, blocking access to the illusion of perfection which we must pursue. The Purim story's central conflict is that of the husk of Amalek. It is not only Haman who is here embodying it. Its power pervades all aspects of the story. The book of Esther is the one book of the Hebrew Bible which never once mentions God. It is completely seated in our material reality. King Ahasuerus, the monarch of the story, lives a life of pure indulgence and objectifies his wife, Vashti. Haman, the king's primary advisor, demands to be worshipped in his role. He requires the people of Shushan to bow down to him. But Mordecai, one of the heroes of the story, does the opposite. He adopts the orphan Esther and puts his community before himself. Mordecai acknowledges that perfection is lacking in our world, but seeks to be an agent that pushes the world more towards the lofty goal of a better future. And he teaches this to Esther. At the major turning point in our story, Esther has become queen. It is clear that she must use her power in order to save the whole community from Haman's evil plot to massacre the Jews. But the rules of the court forbid her from approaching the king without his first acknowledging her. Esther tries to use this as an excuse to avoid confronting the king. In response, Mordecai says to her, "Do not imagine you will escape out of all of the Jews by being in the house of the king. For if you indeed remain silent, relief and rescue will come to the Jews from elsewhere, and you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether for just a time like this you have attained royalty?" And Esther said in response to Mordecai, "Go assemble all the Jews who are in Shushan and fast on my behalf, and do not eat nor drink 3 days, night and day. And I too, with my young women, shall fast in this fashion. And so I shall come to the king, not according to rule. And if I perish, I perish." We see here that Mordecai is able to impress upon Esther that perfection can't be expected. She has attained royalty. She has moved into a higher rung, but cannot simply accept this privilege passively. It must be used to work to overcome the husk of Amalek, the limiting aspect of reality that seeks to serve only the self. She must think of the whole people of Israel and, indeed, the rest of the people of Shushan. A man like Haman is a danger to everyone. Esther, according to this reading, must use her position to overcome an extremely powerful manifestation of Amalek, Haman, who is seeking to exterminate the entire Jewish population. This is not perfection. It isn't easy or clean, nor is perfection attained when Esther succeeds in overthrowing Haman. Still we strive. Still we try. This battle against the husk of Amalek is foundational to what it means to be a Jew. As anything true and core to reality, though, it is actually a very simple idea. There is no perfect action, no perfect timing, no perfect place. Yet we can imagine what perfection could be, and in that imagining, in that striving, we fulfill the commandment of blotting out Amalek. We must never forget that perfection is an idea to strive towards, not a reality to wait for. Our real goal is not perfection, but a world devoid of Amalek, of avarice, of self above all else. Our real goal is to see all people as our brothers and sisters, to not do unto others that which we would find hateful to ourselves. When we strive for this unattainable perfection, we bring together the broken shards of creation, remembering to destroy Amalek wherever we find it. By recognizing that we have attained our place, like Esther, not for our own good, but for the good of all, we continue the ongoing battle against the forces of Amalek within us. Let us, this Purim, remember that what is truly good, what is truly fine, is being surrounded by our brothers and sisters in spirit, enjoying together, putting aside avarice, putting aside selfishness, and striving for a world we may never see, but which we can never forget. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Purim Sameach.